So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to speak today to you. So my name is Jana Moser. I'm a lawyer, but nevertheless, I hope this won't be boring for you right now, what I tell you. I know some people think that at least legal presentations tend to be very boring. What I have to tell you today is something about innovation, of course, and regulation and how it affects your business. In preparation of today's meeting and presentation, I had a look at some surveys and reports. And what was very interesting for me was the awareness of the European data protection regulation in the APAC region. So my first question would be then in your direction. First of all, who of you is from the APAC region? Could you please raise your hand, maybe? Okay, so not some less than 50%. But who of you from the APAC region is aware of the data protection regulation in Europe? Okay, two, so not many people, and that reflects a survey I've read about. About 90% of the companies in the APAC region are not aware of it, and that's very important because 60% of the customers in the same region are concerned about privacy, and that's very important. And why it is so important, I come back to this a bit later. First of all, regarding data and the data flow, it's very interesting to see how data flows currently in between the different countries. You see there a big data flow, especially between the United States and Europe and some other countries as well. And the thing is that is definitely one reason here is the different kind of data accessibility and the internet access you have in the different regions. We have an increase of high-speed internet access, of course, and a huge amount of mobile devices. And more and more companies and more countries now focus on broadband access, and that will increase, of course, the use of data, the use of internet services. So whatever use you provide on the internet will be accessible to more and more people and consumers and other companies. And that will then increase, of course, your possibility to make other businesses all around the world and globally. So you have access then to more markets, to new markets, and to niche. You won't be won't be able to reach then without the internet and without the this accessibility of the internet. Additionally, all of you, I think, or most of your companies are not maintaining your own internet structure and IT structure. And that's the reason why you connect to Google services, for example, Amazon Web Services, or other services on the internet. And that allows you then to provide a high service level, and additionally, not only a high service level, but service levels like follow the sun principles from the IT department, etc. And that's a cost reduction, of course, that you have internet or generally access to different state-of-the-art technologies you usually won't be able to use without the internet. So why do I tell you this? The point is, with the internet and the connection, you are able now to use data in various forms. These are just a few words, a few buzzwords, of course. We heard a lot of these in the presentation before, like chatbots, etc. Programmatic advertisement is now something very common and used, and personalized offerings are very important as well, especially because the users now expect to be addressed personally. So whatever you do on the internet, the people need and they expect you to address them personally. If you don't do it, you will have a competitive disadvantage actually at the moment. So if you go back now to the publishing industry, which is more especially interesting. maybe regarding the publishing industry, somewhere to myself. So I worked before with Axel Springer, one of Germany's biggest publishers. And I was leading there actually for about 1.5 years a big data project for the entire company. So no legal stuff, but more strategy and business stuff. And so we had to find with this subject as well. So I know exactly what that means in the end. So on the one hand, the publishers make their money, especially with advertisement. And then, of course, with subscriptions, some e-commerce, and some classifieds ads. So that's what you usually make your money from. But the point is, do you really know what your customers need? And do you especially know maybe in which direction you have to develop your business? And maybe how you can optimize the relevance of your inventory. And the problem is that most companies don't really know their audiences and the needs of the audiences, and they don't know the patterns. So why, for example, the access to their services in the night is higher or lower, and in the morning or when it's raining, or whatever political movement is going on in the country, if there is a connection or not. And sometimes there are nice connections and you have no idea why. Or maybe if something works very well, you concentrate on a peak, on your traffic, on your website, on your services, because you think it might be very interesting, but you forget to have a deeper look on the things that don't work. And the problem is, and that's something I've already mentioned, that the people expect you to personalize your services. So if you have a B2B business or a B2C business, doesn't really matter. In the moment you personalize your business and your services, the people feel more attracted. They want to have a personalized experience. They want to be addressed personally. They get used to it. And the point is that the other companies creating some kind of a benchmark. If it's Amazon, if it's Google, if it's Facebook, or the other companies, they create kind of a benchmark the users get used to. So it's your job then to more or less provide the same services. Otherwise, the people won't turn their back to you because they expect you to personalize. Additionally, the people start to not to differentiate anymore between the classic brands and the other services where they can access the different services. If it's Facebook or other services, other brands, small companies, we have some startups here who provide good services, and we have, of course, other companies. And you never know in the future who will be your competitor. At the moment, you maybe try now to concentrate on the other competitors with more or less the same business model. But the point is that you don't really know in the future if your next competitor will be a small startup from the other end of the world. And that's the reason why you should try to work on your business model and especially on data. Because the more data you have from your customers and your clients, the more you know about them, about their intent, about their needs, about their interests, and you can adapt your content and your services accordingly. Additionally, you create your own environment and the inventory you have, you can increase the value. And last but not least, this leads to a higher revenue on your side as well. And more revenue and more insights, more analytics, and again, more data. And that results in the end to a higher output of whatever you do. So there's a survey at about 5 to 6% higher output if you are in data, actually. So I'm very curious, who of you already works with data? There's not a lot. What exactly do you do with data?
We download social media content and we analyze it for SME.
Okay, is it personalized really, or is it just...
We don't download any personal content. We only download publicly available content, sponsors and behaviors.
Okay. Who else is doing something with data, analyzing data, something like that? In the last row, the guy?
Yeah, we collect data on the groundworks from the ground level, and also we crawl data online. That's about it.
Okay. So who of you who didn't raise their hands, why don't you work with data? Who is concerned, or why don't you do it? Someone wants to share their knowledge? You're looking so curious. Do you work with data?
Yeah, we provide local presence management, listings management, reputation. So that's data, and we provide that to our branded clients.
But do you work with data to analyze it, to personalize services, etc.?
In that sense, yes. I mean, in terms of understanding what people are saying about their customers, their actual presence as it relates to their competitors, and so forth. So many times, what we're teaching our sales team is to know more about the client than they know about themselves, and that's the way we use data to walk into a sales opportunity.
Okay, and how do you measure the effectiveness of data usage?
Well, in our case, we have a proprietary thing that we call brand score. So we're measuring digital footprint for, let's say, over 1,000 locations. So every location is rated differently. So their digital footprint is different than in one market versus another. So in the United States, you might have 1,000 locations, 1,000 cities that they're in. Every market has different characteristics, different consumer behavior, different product mix, different competition, employees. All that is those are the different variables that make the digital presence for one company. Let's just say it's a brand company. It's a retailer or a restaurant. They have unique characteristics by market. So rather than applying the same information across 1,000 locations, you're really creating micro markets, and with that, being able to move, whether it's advertising decisions, operational decisions, whether it's marketing decisions, you're able to move them forward.
Yeah, and I think that's, at least in the global market, that it's more or less necessary to really adapt whatever you want to have to offer to the different regions. And not only to the different regions, but I think to the single persons or clients as well. So, because not every client or every consumer is the same, right? So, but obviously your services are not focused on this singular level, right?
Well, I think that's the evolution in terms of, you have to start from national to then local, and then local to then, I would say, in terms of personalization, location is the ultimate personalization. And so that's one characteristic of the context that, consumers are looking for, is like, you should know where I am. Then after that, I've come to your location, your pages, your properties before. If I've come to those places before, what have I purchased from you, etc. And if I haven't been there before, then you give me a different experience as well. So the ability to not only personalize the property, but then have rules against it. So for example, if they've seen it 5 times, they've already clicked on that ad, then don't serve them the same information, because now they've already done something, as opposed to you're sending them the same email over and over and over, or the same content of on a web page or something like that. It's the same thing. So being able to personalize and being able to then apply rules against it is the next level, in terms of personalization. Yeah,
and I think most companies don't have really the technology to personalize by themselves, but they use third-party services. Would you agree?
Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, you end up outsourcing to people like Google and Facebook because they're leading. But over time, you're pushing your data to the cloud, so you are losing control of your own data. Yeah. So ultimately, bringing the data back within your control, which we call first-party data, that is the idea that we talk to our clients about. Is like, don't give up to Google. They do have a lot of information, Facebook, etc. But you've got a treasure trove of data underneath you, and learning how to leverage that information is really really key.
Yeah, that's. I would definitely agree to this topic, and then I ask this for purpose, of course. because I think one of the key aspects regarding data and the data usage is the competition itself and the dependence on third parties. You've already mentioned quite correctly what that means if you give data to another party. Here I have an example, it's WeChat, and I think everybody of you knows who WeChat is. It's something we started small. It's like Facebook and all the others. They started simply with messaging or social networking or whatever it is, and then they grow. And they grow tremendously. And they grow to the first platform the consumers go to. And that means the first platform where the data is generated and where the revenue is generated. And that means, in this case, I've seen, I thought about including there a video from YouTube about WeChat and the I'd say, development of WeChat, that now everything is really happening in this platform and nothing is happening outside anymore. That means for the companies who provide other services or other content on the internet, they have really tremendous efforts to be seen by the clients. And that means for the other companies, of course, to sell advertisement, to sell their classified ads, whatever they have outside of these platforms. Everything is happening now in WeChat. You can book an appointment, you can search a place, you can, whatever you want to do there, you can do in WeChat. But that's only one example. The other example, it's more a technical example right now, is AMP. So it's accelerated mobile pages. And this is very important as well, at least when you think about competition. Because what does it mean? In this case here, this is an example from Google AMP. That means if you create a website, usually you have to create an HTML website. But now to provide your website for mobiles in a nice and user-friendly way, you have to create an AMP, an accelerated mobile page as well. But this one loads faster. That's very good from a consumer perspective, because the users expect the website to load very quickly and fast. If it does not, they will jump to another website. So you have to adapt your services to the consumer needs, of course, to sell advertisement, to sell whatever you want to sell, of course. But in this case, then, the AMP website, HTML site, is cached then by Google for seconds or hours or days or whatever. It depends on the settings, and this results in a higher ranking at Google. That's good for you, because I know almost everybody of you has a SEO expert in your company. So he will definitely recommend, okay, for mobile website, everything goes mobile. You have to create an HTML AMP site. But the point is then that if everything is cached there, your traffic on your website will be lower. And of course, everything is monitored as well by Google. And the worst thing is that we don't really know how Google then, in these AMP HTML sites, how do they interfere with the advertisement? And most of you do advertisement as well, or have some revenue out of advertisement. And to adapt the user experience and adapt the advertisement in the AMP site, that means that they get rid maybe of annoying ads on the mobile. And that means for you less ad impressions. So although you try now to be independent, you have nevertheless to adapt your services to the different needs, in this case the mobile needs. And that means that you have to be aware that this might interfere with your advertisement as well. So regarding the competition and other aspects, and now we come to my most interesting topic, for most people the most boring topic, but I will describe now why it's not the most boring topic. It's privacy. And that's the reason why I mentioned right at the beginning the privacy and data protection topic. You see here on the left-hand side, again, how the data flow is between the different countries. On the right-hand side, there's a nice map that shows how strict the regulation is. The red countries are the countries where the data protection regulation is more stricter than in the others. And as you can see, maybe there's a data flow between two areas where the at least the regulation is different. And regarding the different regulation, I have now a table here. It's an extract actually from a far more detailed analysis by a law firm. But what that shows you is that there is a different understanding of privacy. And it's so important because privacy in Europe, for example, or United States, is differently understood actually. And that's not only interesting from a consumer perspective, but if you talk about the subject, that has a huge influence on the competition. So that means if you'd like to provide your services globally, you have to be aware of the different regulations in the different areas. If you're not aware of it, and if you don't understand, for example, if you talk about privacy, I've heard before the word, yeah, it's public data, we crawled it, etc. I can use it. And you want to use data, for example, in Europe or in the United States, that might lead to high fines. And in the future, with the data protection regulation in Europe, for example, that means that about 4% of the total turnover globally of the entire group you're working on can be the fine. So 4% or 20 million, which amount is higher? 20 million euro, by the way. So if you're not aware of it, you will have a problem. And the interesting thing is that the bigger companies, of course, they work on it. And if you try now to avoid the subject because you think, oh, honestly speaking, nobody will notice it, I don't try to work on the subject, it will go away or it won't happen to me. The problem is that if you have this data then and you are not allowed to use it, you have the fine on the one hand, the fines, and on the other hand, maybe you have to delete the data. And then you have a competitive disadvantage because you have no data, you can't customize your services, and you can't really adapt the services you want to provide to the customers' and clients' needs. And that's especially interesting when it comes to the transfer of data to different countries. Because most of you work with these kind of content delivery networks, with cloud services, etc. And these services all include the transfer of personal identifiable information. So if you're not aware of it, you should get aware of it. So in whatever country you work in, because everything is connected, and that's the reason why I showed right at the beginning the different data flow. Everything is connected, although it's some kind of regulation just in Europe, or maybe some kind of regulation in Australia or the United States, doesn't really matter. It affects you as well, because everything is connected. And your data, I'm pretty sure, is stored somewhere around the world and not just in your company's offices, because it's simply too expensive. So you have a bundle of challenges when it comes to data monetization. The first one is, and the most important thing, is culture. Culture, I mean, in a company culture. The point is that you need, for a data-driven company, you need to incentivize your leadership. And your employees, they have to understand why data is important. Additionally, you have to implement a strategy, a data strategy, a digital strategy, a digitization strategy. If you don't have it, or if you work on it, first of all, you should have it, and the second one, stick to it. Don't just create it and don't live it, and not just top down or bottom up. You have to create a whole environment and a culture in your company to really work with data. But it's not just your company, of course. It's your clients as well. That means you have to make your clients understand that you want to go to a data-driven company. You want to develop to a data-driven company. And you have to find a trial and error approach on the one hand with your clients, and to be independent from the third parties I've mentioned before. We will hear a lot now about the next days, about Facebook, about Google, about how to use it, about the chatbots. You have to do it, you have to work with it, you have to learn from it. But don't rely only on the third parties. Be aware of your USPs you have, and try to create a balanced relationship. For those companies who are smaller, who will definitely struggle with it, so try to work with other smaller companies together, and not just to rely on the big ones, because once they change the terms and conditions or their environment, you just have to run after them. And you're just a small, tiny piece for them, and you will struggle then with your business and the challenges of your business. And last but not least, the regulation, of course, I've already mentioned. Especially when it comes to data-driven businesses, it's privacy, of course, but it's competition law and other laws as well. Monitor not only your local regulation, but the international regulation as well. So in the end, I almost have 5.5 minutes, so you have now the chance to ask more questions. But in the end, if you have an overview about it, on it, you have the risk and the chances. And the chances definitely overweight the risk. Regarding the risk, of course, you have more efforts to convince your employees to restructure your company, maybe to go even more in a data-driven direction. And you have higher compliance expenses, because the more data you have to work on IT security, on everything regarding these processes, on data processes, etc. And you have a higher complexity that requires definitely a clear strategy on data and IT. But on the other hand, you have new revenue streams you can work on and you can develop. You remain and you optimize definitely your competitiveness. If you don't, you will have a problem in the future. You will maybe survive in the next 2 to 3, 4 years if you're happy. If not, you will have a problem. We've already heard about the decline of the offline revenues, advertisement revenues, etc. So you have to work on both fields. On the one hand, on the online side and the data-driven side. On the other hand, on the old side, so to say, your old revenue stream, because there you get a lot of money to support your new businesses. So you have to work on both fields. That might be a bit schizophrenic, but nevertheless, it helps you then to build up your new online environment. And regarding the cost reduction, I think that's pretty clear as well, because if you're able then to upload your data, whatever you have, your content, to different areas, you can reduce your costs. You can use services provided by third parties, but you will then, of course, the last point, be able to reevaluate your processes you've already in place. Because the processes you've already in place, one of the most important or most often heard sentences is, we've already done this way, why should we change it? So this is now the point where you can jump in and say, now we have another focus, it's the online data-driven focus. We have to work on digitization, we have to work on data, and that means we have to change our processes we've run so far. And this is definitely a good chance to grab it and to change it and to reevaluate it. So thanks so far. 2.5 more minutes. So if you have any question, please raise your hands. Feel free to contact me after that. So on every data, privacy, legal aspects, whatever you want to talk about. Thank you very much so far.
Thank you, Jana. Does anyone have a quick question? All right. This may seem silly, but privacy, what are some of the most common violations of privacy that maybe companies don't realize they're making?
I think the most common privacy violation is simply tracking when it's online. If it's online, it's simply tracking, because people or companies track everything they have. They start with the IP address, because most companies think it's only connected to device, a mobile device or whatever it is, or it's the device number, the so-called EMI, or Wi-Fi MAC address, and they connect it with more data, more data, more data. And this is in most countries, at least in Europe, and now it's not in the United States as well. You need the prior consent most of the time. And then they collect a lot of data, they use it, or they address persons via email directly without the explicit consent.
So I'm wondering if some of these, landmines around privacy, et cetera, is one of the things that kind of prevents companies from engaging with data more. Do you feel? I'm wondering if the relatively low show of hands, I don't know if that was the reason or just other reasons, but are the regulations, is compliance as daunting as perhaps it seems, or should companies not be sort of intimidated by this?
I think most companies are intimidated by it because it's a bit like tax law, nobody
Right.
wants to deal with it because they think it's boring. But if you deal with it right at the beginning, so by default and by design, it's not a problem at all. Most companies simply forget that if you have implemented technology and you haven't thought about privacy right at the beginning, that means in the end they have huge efforts and they have to spend a lot of money to adapt their system again. Simply to avoid it, as long as they don't have to face fines. I mean, that's okay. Many companies do it, especially smaller companies, but it's maybe just a misunderstanding. Privacy is not really an obstacle or an impediment. It can be simply done on the fly. You just have to be aware of it.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll have to end it there. Please join me in thanking Jana.